How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Junji Ito Maniac, Season 1, Episode 5, and this one's entitled Intruder and Long Hair in the Attic. This is, of course, based on manga by Junji Ito. And I do want to say right at the beginning that I have been really enjoying this show so far. It's a definite step up from Junji Ito Collection. Obviously not as good as the original comics, but a fun way to revisit some of his classic stories in a different way, this time with cool animation behind it, and it is a step in the right direction. And overall, I had been really enjoying this series, but that being said, this is the first one that I felt fell a little bit flat. And I'm not a comedy teardown channel, I'm not going to complain too hard, but that being said, yeah, this episode, it just felt a little more like something from Junji Ito Collection than Maniac, and there's a few reasons behind it. First, Intruder was probably the wrong story to choose. Intruder is an Oshikiri story. It's actually chapter 4 of 6, and yeah, you're adapting a weird middle chapter. It doesn't have the emotional weight. The Oshikiri stories can be read individually, but this one is definitely one that's stronger with the other episodes. It's actually a big answer piece as to what's been going on in the series that you don't really have that weight for by itself. Long Hair in the Attic, the original manga is classic, but sadly the creature at the end of it doesn't quite translate into animation, and it wasn't as shocking as the original short story. And I do also want to say, the division in a lot of the past episodes, whenever they divided them up in Junji Ito Maniac, it was a longer story and a shorter story, but here, for whatever reason, they divide it almost in half, and the first half could have used more time. It's a paranormal investigation story, and when things come too quickly in a paranormal investigation, it feels too convenient. In the last half, Long Hair in the Attic, it's a good Junji Ito story, but really looking back on it, this is one that you could have done pretty quickly. So yeah, I don't know why this one was not asymmetrical, but overall, I don't want to complain too hard. It was still a good enough episode, but this is the first one out of the series that I've left it feeling a little bit flat. You know, it's not the worst thing ever. I don't regret watching it or anything, but it was just not the best episode. Anyway, we'll get more onto why in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the episode's plots individually. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers, but I want to talk about what happens and do a little bit of an analysis for each one. And we're opening up with Intruder. Like I said, Intruder is an Oshikiri story. Oshikiri is this kid who his parents are constantly away on business, and in turn he's left alone in his haunted house, and very strange and mysterious stuff happens to this kid. He's also a little short, he's a bit of a social outcast, he's kind of the weirdo kid, and overall I really did enjoy reading the Oshikiri stories. They're collected in the Frankenstein collection, and this is essentially two big stories, the Frankenstein story and the Oshikiri stories. The other few stories that are in here are like really short, under 10-page things, so even though they call this Frankenstein, this really is Frankenstein and Oshikiri. Now that being said, like I said, this is a very weird choice to adapt this one, and I'll try to get the explanation out pretty quick, but it's a little complicated, so just give me a second. This is chapter 4, and in chapter 1 of Oshikiri, something big and strange happens, but it's not really explained until chapter 4 how exactly chapter 1 fits into the rest. So in turn, at the end of this episode, it's a solution to the mystery. It's an answer, but without having the question as proposed in the first 3 chapters, the answer kind of falls flat when viewed individually. This also is a setup for the villain who will appear in Chapter 5. So it's an answer to the past chapters, and it's a setup for the next chapter. Out of all the Oshikiri series, this one is the least standalone, and also features the least of Junji Ito's insane, messed up imagery. So yeah, kind of a weird choice to do this one. That being said, this is probably the weakest of the Oshikiri series, and the other ones are much stronger. I do want to say, if this one is adapted, if we get 4 more seasons of Junji Ito Anthology TV, I hope that we just get the whole series adapted, and then we can go through and watch all the Oshikiri stuff in one go. So hopefully we'll get that. But anyway, you know how I said the end of this episode sets up the villain for Chapter 5? If you guys want to see that, we already have Chapter 5 adapted in the last Junji Ito Anthology. Chapter 5 is in Junji Ito Collection. I don't really get what the plan is here. In the first series, we adapt Chapter 5, and then we do Chapter 4 in the second. Yeah, this is a confusing Pulp Fiction way of choosing to put these out. Whatever, enough of this continuity stuff. Let's talk about the actual story itself. But that being said, in regards to spoilers, I won't try to spoil this story. But that being said, I am talking about a Chapter 4 of 6. If you guys want to, you can pause this right now and go read all the Oshikiri stories just to be super safe on spoilers. But anyway, jumping in, we get this opening, a nightmare vision of Oshikiri digging up his own grave. This is a lot of the imagery here is a reference to the first story, Neck Spectre, which they maybe should have adapted instead. But in the original comic, he's talking to his cousin about these disembodied footsteps he's hearing, and that does set up the mystery for this episode better, but it's not as striking as what they do in the anime, and I get why they did that. But anyway, we cut to Oshikiri at the library. There are some people at the next table over, and they're into the paranormal. The main guy says, "I'm a psychic, and I've been feeling something lately." What do you mean, ghost? Not ghost. Beings from another dimension. And he wants to go get this book that explains it really well, and that happens to be the book that Oshikiri's reading. So the friends start to talk to Oshikiri, and he starts to get pulled into this new friend group. Now, after they talk for a bit, Oshikiri mentions that he lives in a haunted house, and they all decide to go over there and see what's going on with the house. And they witness a very strange paranormal event. And I won't go any farther than that. I do want to say it's not as big and over the top as Junji Ito's other reveals in this series, but it still is striking enough, but it's not intense body horror or anything. But also, the investigation, like I mentioned earlier, doing this as a half episode rushes it. In the comic, the guy feels the presence on the first day, but that's it. They don't even get the footsteps on the first day of the investigation. And you know from the previous chapters that Oshikiri's house is definitely haunted, and you want them to find something to help the poor kid out, so there's a lot more tension. Will they find anything when the investigation's stretched out? But truncating it all for this episode, it just feels a little too convenient that they just happen to right away find the big reveal. So that was a little disappointing. Also disappointing, Oshikiri feels too normal. He feels like just a guy here. And in the comics, like I said, he's short, he's a social outcast, he lives alone in his haunted house. He's a troubled kid, and I really wish that came across here, but in this episode, he feels too much like just a guy, you know? And I did really miss that. And like I said, the ending reveal, when you don't have the weight of the first 3 Oshikiri chapters, you don't get the impact that the end of this episode is supposed to bring. So yeah, it was just a super weird choice to do Oshikiri chapter 4 of all things, but at least it does connect directly to the previous chapter they adapted. And like I said, this is the weakest of the chapters, so if we got this one knocked out, at least we have it done. And hopefully when they get on to the next 4 Junji Ito anthology shows, whatever they're called, Junji Ito Nightmares, Junji Ito Masterworks, hopefully whenever we get to the next 4, we'll get the other Oshikiri chapters, because I would love to watch them all the way through as one big story in the order they were intended to be. So at least we got another one. Anyway, moving along to Long Hair in the Attic. Long Hair in the Attic can be found in Deserter. Deserter is a collection of Junji Ito's earliest works, and previously on this show, we had seen their adaptation of The Sandman's Lair. Like I said in that episode, really cool to see some of Junji Ito's earliest examples of intense body horror. In this episode, we get a man and a woman in the car, and they break up. It's the guy's idea. He says, I want to be more spontaneous, and I want to be more wild and carefree, and you do things like agree with everything I say, and it gets kind of old and needy, and they decide to break up. And yeah, if the relationship's not working, best to just call it off, right? But then we find out they've actually been together for 9 years. This should probably have happened a long time ago. 9 years is a lot of time. What happened? Did I mishear that? Gee. But anyway, the girl's obviously sad. She goes back into her house and starts crying. She lives there with her mom, dad, and younger sister. And we get this flashback sequence where she starts to, she remembers one of their earliest dates. She said she'd never been to the beach before, so he takes her, and she has really short hair, and he says, I like long hair, you should grow it out, you would look really great with long hair. And in the comic, there's this additional panel where he's like going, you should get it about to right here. And it does really emphasize, you know, this is his choice. This is something that she did for him. And in the animation, we do get a few shots really emphasizing just how long her hair is. It is exceptionally long. Anyway, the next day, she wakes up. The sister had said there are rats in the attic, and she wakes up the next day with a dead rat tangled up in her hair. Not paranormal, but still a really gross concept. So she's washing her hair and she says, my boyfriend was the one who insisted I grow it out, and also a rat just died in it. I'm gonna cut this hair off. So she gets ready for her haircut. She's gonna have her sister do it. And when the sister goes downstairs to get the scissors, the older sister screams. They go upstairs and find the older sister, the main character of the story, has been murdered. Her head has been cut completely off and stolen. That's messed up. We transition for the younger sister to be our new main character, and she has to figure out what happened. And of course, the episode's called In the Attic, the long hair in the attic. We know there's something upstairs, and it is going to be a disturbing reveal. Now that being said, the reveal. When I saw the reveal in the original manga, I won't spoil what it is, but when I saw it, it was one of those that I just stopped reading for a second and just stared down at the page. It was such a messed up, crazy reveal. It was also really cool. It was one of those things that I wanted to build a replica of it myself and put it in the front yard for Halloween, but then I thought that would probably be a little too far and I probably shouldn't do that. But it was just such a striking image, and I really wanted to see the reveal in animation. But sadly, it just didn't quite work. A few reasons for that. One, when you flip the page and you see the reveal, it's all spelled out there. And the thing is, it is something so disturbing and messed up, it takes your brain a while to comprehend it anyway. It should be clearer. But in this one, the attic is a little too dark, and you don't get as good a look of it as you should. A lot of things in horror should be obscured and made more creepy that way, but some things are so messed up, the most terrifying thing you can do is to just show it, and that's really what they should have done here. It's not as much of an impact if you don't see it clearly. And also, they do, like, in order to draw the moment out, they do a few close-up shots just really quickly flashing on what it is. And it really just, with these, I get they were trying to draw the moment out, but it really just felt like they were spoiling what it was with not as good shots, so that the actual shot doesn't have as much of an impact. Thirdly, the animation. This is one of those things that I read the comic knowing it was going to be adapted, and I was really excited to see what this would look like in animation. Sadly, it does fall a little bit flat. The thing is, this is one of those things that would be really hard to animate naturally, and yeah, it could look really cool in animation, but it would take forever to do it. You would need time and resources, and in turn, they just didn't really have the budget to make this thing move how it needed to, and that was really sad. If you guys are great animators, I would love to see a fan reanimation of this, because it really could have came out a lot better. But anyway, a few other things I do want to mention with this episode that they changed. One is after the sister's dead body is found, they did cut out a scene where the neighbors are reacting to the news, and there's this line, "One of the daughters is dead, the pretty one." Just a little tiny bit of social meanness added on top of this tragedy. So yeah, that scene was cut out. Also, the ending of this story, they changed the ending to give it something more big and fantastical, and I think the original ending, which was simpler, left a bigger impact, but they had to try to do this elaborate thing to try to be a spectacle, and it didn't come out perfect. Anyway, that's my thoughts on these two episodes. Like I said, I really do like this series. It's just this is the first one that felt more like Junji Ito Collection than Junji Ito Maniac. And yeah, they just didn't come out as good as they could have. But that being said, I've already watched the next episode, and I'll try to get to that review soon. And I do want to say episode 6, Mold and Library Visions, came out so much better. So I try to get to the review of those two pretty quickly. Definitely would recommend the next episode. This one, though, it's still watchable, but yeah, this is probably one of the worst in the series. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Junji Ito playlist, where you can see my reviews of the past episodes. Those should be in there, as well as my reviews of a lot of his books. I'm working on getting reviews up for all of them. They're all pretty great. So that's something I'm working on. You can also see my unboxings of Junji Ito Uzumaki pocket curses in there. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.